Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Our mission today to really unpack some fascinating analysis focusing specifically on the All Blacks and the Springboks coming out of that recent Rugby Championship. We're looking beyond just the final points table here. We've got insights from former All Blacks head coach Laurie Mains, and he offers a, well, maybe surprising tactical view on why New Zealand might be trailing their big rivals right now. Yeah, this deep dive is really for you, the learner, the fan who wants to get into those tactical specifics, what really separates these two huge teams. We'll focus on selection calls, those key moments, and before we jump into the nitty-gritty, especially around the forwards, maybe take a quick second now to subscribe to Rugby Obsession. That way you won't miss any of our analysis.
Absolutely, and the context is just incredible, isn't it? The championship finish was razor thin. Both teams, South Africa and New Zealand, ended up tied, 19 points each. The Springboks only took the trophy because their points difference was, well, much better. Not because they won more matches. Both had 4 wins, 2 losses.
Right, and that context, that tie on 19 points, it's so important because despite how close it was on the table, and yes, despite one really big scoreline difference in one game, Laurie Mains' main point, his core idea, is that there's actually not much difference between the Bucks and the All Blacks. Not in raw ability, anyway. He sees the gap as being almost entirely tactical.
Yeah.
And psychological.
Which is, a challenging view when you just look at the head-to-heads this year. That first match, All Blacks won 24-17 at Eden Park. Pretty confident performance, extended that amazing unbeaten run there, 51 tests, they seemed in control. But then the return match, wow. Wellington, the Springboks hit back hard, 43-10. As you said, the All Blacks' heaviest defeat ever. I mean, that scoreline screams domination, not closeness.
Exactly. And this is where Mains' thinking gets really interesting. He took that specific game, that huge loss, and he actually used it to argue his point about the teams being close. Talking on the Platform Men's Ed podcast, he pointed out that even at halftime in that Wellington test, the game was, in his words, pretty equal. And he stresses this was with a team he felt wasn't ideally picked. He called it not a very well thought out selected All Black team. He really zeroes in on the selection of a couple of key forwards, arguing that cost them the ability to compete physically in the second half. It opened up that tactical gap the Bulls just poured through.
Okay, let's dig into those selections then, because it sounds like the absolute foundation of his argument. His first point was about Tupou Vaa'i. Now, Vaa'i had been playing really well, an outstanding success, Mains called him, but at blindside flanker, number 6, against France, Argentina, right? The flanker role, it's about dynamism, getting around the park, linking play, tackling out wide. Very different from lock. But against the Bucks in Wellington, they moved Vaa'i into lock. Number 4 or 5, the engine room. That's about bulk, scrummaging power, line-out expertise. Mains argued it was a big mistake. Vaa'i was suddenly marking guys much bigger and stronger, putting the All Black Type 5 physically on the back foot from the start.
And that problem was made worse, in Mains' view, by who wasn't starting. He felt the All Blacks looked best this season when Vaa'i was at 6, and their biggest player, Fabian Holland, was starting at lock, providing that crucial size and power. But in that key second test, Holland was on the bench.
So you see the double issue he's highlighting.
Yeah, Vaa'i, the dynamic flanker, playing out of position needing bulk, and Holland, the actual bulk, sitting on the bench.
Exactly. Mains saw that as a major tactical compromise that just set them up for that second half collapse.
It basically gave the Springboks an open invitation, didn't it?
Pretty much. Mains then detailed exactly why the game fell apart after halftime. He didn't just say they played badly. He pointed to specific technical and crucially mental issues that he felt were avoidable. 3 main things he highlighted that caused it all to unravel. First, they couldn't win their own lineouts consistently in that second half. And Mains directly linked that to Holland not being there. Lose your lineout, you lose possession, obviously, but against the Bucks, you're giving them the perfect platform. Structured ball, mauls, phases where they can impose themselves physically.
Okay, lineouts make sense with the selection argument. Then factor 2, the scrums. They were getting pushed back, which, feels significant given the history between these packs. But this is where Mains makes that really bold claim. He called it a mental lapse, not a physical lapse. He actually asserted the Springboks are not physically stronger in the scrum.
Which is... yeah, that's a big statement, isn't it? How can you definitively say the biggest pack in world rugby didn't just outmuscle them? For Mains, I think, a mental lapse in the scrum means a tiny breakdown in timing or commitment, maybe a slight hesitation on the hit, Maybe not quite reacting perfectly under pressure. It's not about sheer muscle power. It's about that psychological edge, that split-second coordination. Once the box sense that tiny instability, the confidence can just drain from the opposition pack, and then the physical performance drops.
Ah, okay. So it's like the difference between being genuinely overpowered versus maybe psychologically conceding that power first.
That seems to be his interpretation, yes. And the third factor he mentioned ties back into selection again, handling the high ball. They really struggled under the high kicks. Mains specifically mentioned the difficulty for Damian McKenzie at fullback, relatively small compared to the box wings who are, 3 or 4 inches taller. Plus, those wings are aggressive chasers. It's a clear tactic from South Africa. If you can't secure those high balls, you're just constantly giving away territory and momentum. It puts immense pressure on your defense.
So Mains pulls it all together. If you fail in those 3 pillars, your own scrum, your own lineout, and securing high kicks, he says the game will fall apart, no matter how close it was at halftime. It frames the loss less as a fundamental gap in talent or fitness, and more as, well, a failure of selection that cascaded into a crisis of confidence and execution in key set-piece areas.
Exactly. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, his analysis really does suggest the gap isn't some deep structural thing between the squads. It's tactical. It's mental. The talent's there, he implies, but the specific choices and the resulting execution weren't in that crucial game. Which raises a huge question, doesn't it? Mains seems to imply that one selection decision benching Holland effectively started a chain reaction that cost them the championship. How much weight can a single selection really carry in the whole psychological battle of a test match like that?
It's fascinating. And look, if you're finding this level of detailed tactical breakdown interesting, really getting into the weeds of international rugby strategy, then please do hit subscribe on Rugby Obsession right now. We do this kind of analysis regularly.
That mental component is key here. It shifts the narrative, doesn't it? From
Yeah.
the All Blacks were simply outplayed to maybe the All Blacks stumbled when the pressure peaked.
So, thinking about it, what stands out most critically to you listening? Is it Main's critique of that Holland selection, the decision that potentially created the physical vulnerability? Or is it that mental lapse idea in the scrum he identified, the moment where maybe the psychological battle was lost, which then led to the physical outcome? That distinction feels really important at this level.
It really does. And this analysis, the idea that maybe the heaviest defeat in All Black history could be significantly pinned on a mental lapse in the scrum rather than just being physically dominated, well, it leaves you with a really provocative thought, doesn't it? In top-tier international rugby, especially between these massive rivals, is the absolute critical difference between winning and losing actually psychological preparation, tactical foresight, maybe even more than raw skill or conditioning on the day. That ability to execute under extreme pressure seems paramount.
A fascinating question to ponder. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into those specific tactical goals shaping the Springboks versus All Blacks contest. And remember, if you want more of this kind of detailed, high-level rugby chat, please subscribe to Rugby Obsession wherever you get your podcasts or audio content. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we will look forward to you listening to our next episode.